For 12 years, I have always stood behind her, silently protecting her, but she never gave me a real place. She changed boyfriends one after another, and I was always the shadow that could not be crossed. Until that day, she appeared in front of me with her new boyfriend, took his hand, and gently introduced, "This is my boyfriend, Ryan." At that moment, my heart seemed to be hit hard, and all my expectations and love collapsed in an instant. She said lightly, "I have always treated you as my brother. All those years, my deep affection was only worthy of this indifferent identity." I stood there, my heart was broken. I used to be her only one, but now I am the least important existence in her heart. Later, she came to me with a big bouquet of roses in her hand, her eyes full of guilt. "Can you give me another chance?" At that moment, I didn't waver at all, but held the wedding invitation tightly in my hand and handed it to her. "Next week, I'm getting married. Remember to come and participate." Jessica sent a message to her childhood friend group. "Gather at the usual place tonight. I have something to announce." This message was like a bomb, and it instantly exploded. Everyone speculated that she was finally going to settle down, and some people even started to laugh at me. Finally, someone settled down. Congratulations. I felt like something was holding me down, feeling depressed and powerless. She had never given me a legitimate identity, and I just watched her with other men silently. And I was still just an outsider. She was the last one to arrive at the party Jessica arranged. She held the arm of a young boy, her eyes full of tenderness. The boy looked a little shy, and his eyes glanced at us from time to time, looking very uncomfortable. Jessica introduced him. "This is my boyfriend, Ryan." Her eyes were soft and gentle, just like me in the past. At that moment, my heart suddenly tightened, as if it was pinched by some invisible force. Simon reacted the fastest and laughed easily. "When did you get a boyfriend?" Her laughter was deliberately relaxed, but it couldn't hide the worry in her eyes. I lowered my head, clenched the wine glass in my hand, and a bitter taste came from my mouth. I always knew that Jessica had never given me a formal identity. There was never any legitimate jealousy or possession between us. She changed boyfriends one after another, and I always stayed there and watched. The atmosphere at the party became awkward for a moment. Jessica still smiled with that familiar tenderness. "Chu Yin is a little shy. Don't scare him." At that moment, I seemed to have returned to 12 years ago. At that time, I was also a shy teenager and was brought into Jessica's world. At that time, she always smiled and said, "Don't scare him, he is still young." Now she said this sentence again, but this time, it sounded so heavy in my ears. My heart suddenly felt empty. After more than 10 years of friendship, I always thought that my waiting was meaningful. But now, the person standing in front of me is no longer the familiar Jessica, but a woman with a new lover. "Sister, they don't seem to welcome me." Ryan gently pulled Jessica's clothes and whispered. This sentence was like an invisible knife, piercing my heart, and instantly made me feel indescribable, complex emotions. Seeing his shy look, I couldn't help but think of the scene when she called me like this for the first time that year. At that time, Jessica always liked to sneak up on me from behind, either snatching my things or jumping on my back, hugging me tightly, and forcing me to call her sister. She was 2 months older than me, but she was always naughty and mischievous, which made me compromise every time. It was a sacrifice that I was willing to make, because every time I called out sister, my face would turn red like fire. She used to be so lively and naughty, and would even do things that made people laugh and cry. But today, she has become so indifferent, which is completely inconsistent with my previous dependence and pampering. Just as I was lost in my memories, there was a loud bang of a glass falling in the corner, breaking all the silence. Alex, he stood there, his face gloomy, his eyes full of anger. "Jessica, what the hell have you thought of William for all these years?" His angry voice echoed in the room, like a knife stabbing into my chest. Jessica's face suddenly became heavy. Her eyes moved among the crowd and finally landed on me. Her thin lips opened and closed slightly. "I don't know if you have misunderstood something. I always only regard William as my brother. You only treat me as your brother? When I heard this, an indescribable pain surged in my heart. Her words were like a sharp needle, piercing the old wounds in my heart that had already been broken thousands of times. I held back the pain in my heart and smiled bitterly. I still remember clearly last year's reunion party. Simon bought firecrackers, and we all set them off together. She sat lazily beside me, holding my arm, and said with a smile, "Our William has to stay here with me." But now, she could say brother so coldly. I suddenly realized that my heart no longer belonged to her. I stood there quietly with a dull pain in my chest, but it seemed that it had nothing to do with me. I no longer expected anything. The passion and longing I once had long since been worn out by countless waits. Just like when I sent my painstakingly written novel to a magazine, but received a reply that it was not accepted, I could only accept it calmly. Alex seemed to notice that something was wrong with me. He wanted to continue speaking for me, but I stopped him. "No need," I said coldly, with an unspeakable bitterness in my heart. He gritted his teeth, looked at me, cursed useless, and then slammed the door and left. It didn't seem appropriate to stay any longer in this situation, so I picked up my phone and prepared to follow him out. When I pushed open the door, I heard the sound of wine glasses breaking behind me. I stopped, turned around, and smiled. "Sister, you guys play first. I'll go see Simon." This was the first time I called her sister so happily, but obviously she didn't feel any touch. Jessica was stunned, and then she repeated coldly, "Come back." But I didn't look back. I gently opened the door and walked out. The sound of the wine glass breaking behind me seemed to foreshadow the shattering of everything. I decided to go find Alex, although we have always had a bad relationship, but this time I just wanted to leave. When I walked out of the door, Alex was already leaning against the wall smoking. When he saw me coming, he put out his cigarette and threw it into the trash can. "Are you going home now? Do you mind giving me a ride?" I sighed, but nodded without saying no. We didn't argue along the way. This was a rare time for us to be alone, but the topic never involved Jessica. When I sent him to the door of his house, he suddenly said that Ryan is very similar to you in the past. However, I couldn't understand the deep meaning in his eyes. No matter how similar they are, it's still impossible. I replied indifferently, then opened the car door and drove him out. Just after I parked the car, Alex called me and urged me to check WeChat. When I opened the message, I saw red envelopes flying all over the group. Jessica had just added Ryan. Everyone sent red envelopes to congratulate Ryan on his breakup. I felt a little unwilling, so I also casually wrapped a red envelope. The moment I sent it, I just breathed a sigh of relief. However, the next second, I was kicked out of the group by Jessica. Then, she sent me a private message. "Sorry, William, your presence makes Ryan uncomfortable. Let's not contact each other anymore." I pursed my lips tightly, and my chest felt like it was hit hard. At that moment, it seemed as if everything collapsed in an instant. After thinking for a moment, I calmly replied to her, "Okay." However, after sending the message, I saw a striking red exclamation mark. She deleted me. From the green years to the golden years, 12 years of knowing and accompanying each other. In the end, she lost to the love with Ryan. My heart is heavy, my eyes are sore, but I can't shed tears. In the past, Jessica would shake and laugh with me, telling me, "Except for my parents, no one is more important than you." But now, she told me, "Your presence makes Ryan uncomfortable. Let's not contact each other for now." I felt absurd. I loved her so deeply, but I never did anything crazy and never crossed the line. I just protected her silently. Jessica's first love was with my college roommate, the boy who knew all my feelings for her. The two of us later appeared in front of me hand in hand. My roommate smiled heartily, looked at Jessica sincerely, and said to me, "William, if it weren't for you, I wouldn't have been able to pursue Jessica." That day, the wind was very strong, and I stood on the tree-lined avenue outside the library, feeling like a fool. It turned out that he approached me and made friends with me for Jessica. I distanced myself from him and Jessica. However, their love only lasted 3 days. When my roommate came back, he got mad and asked me with red eyes, "Jessica dumped me. Are you satisfied now?" I was confused. I didn't do anything. So why did he ask me? But since he asked, I told him the truth. Yes, I am satisfied. Afterwards, Jessica dragged me out for a big meal. She teased me with a playful smile. "You haven't talked to me for 3 days. Can you stop being angry?" I explained helplessly. "I'm not angry. It's just that you are in a relationship, and we should keep a proper distance. This is good for everyone." But she responded confidently. "I agreed to give a try because I saw that you have a good relationship with him. I like what William likes, and I don't like what William doesn't like either." As Jessica's relationship kept changing, she always tried to avoid boys who had contact with me. Even so, the circle in Beijing was not big, and the news always reached my ears through others. Sometimes, at dinner parties, someone would joke, "You have so many boyfriends. When will you bring someone you know?" Jessica replied nonchalantly, "Not yet." Her love affair was passed around by people, and almost every time it was accompanied by some unbearable emotions. Some begged me to stay away from her, and some were bluntly abusive. After so many times, I realized that even if I did nothing as long as it existed, it was an original sin. Jessica chose to cut off contact with me for Ryan's feelings. I respect her decision, but why did she kick me out of the group? There was not only her in the group, but also my best friend who had been with me for 12 years. The phone kept ringing, I hung up, and replied to each message saying that I was fine and that they didn't need to worry. Then I took out a cigarette, lit it, and watched it burn out bit by bit. Although men don't cry easily, when emotions are close to the edge of collapse, the most unbearable thing is the kind concern from others. I was afraid that I would not be able to hold back my tears. More than an hour later, Simon saw that I was safe and sound, walked in, and scratched his head awkwardly. "Brother, I was afraid that you would be upset, so I came to see you." I glared at him and didn't answer. A few minutes later, he asked cautiously, "William, Jessica was just confused for a moment. We can all see how much that Ryan looks like. Can you give him another chance?" I didn't answer, but I knew what he wanted to say. Ryan and I have so many similarities. But how can I overlap with my past self? I frowned slightly and didn't answer his question directly. After a moment's silence, I whispered, "Simon, I want to go back to see my grandma. When my mother was pregnant with me, my father's business almost went bankrupt. Later, they found a feng shui master who told them that I was born with bad luck and would affect my father's fortune. So, I was sent to my grandmother's house when I was born. My grandmother named me William and gave me a stable childhood. But when I was 14, my grandmother passed away. I was left alone, wandering in this land that once gave me endless warmth. I always thought that as long as Jessica was there, I would never be alone. Even if we never became a couple, she would still be the most important person in my life. It felt like she would always be my first choice. But reality slapped me in the face. During the rainy season, Jiangnan was shrouded in a misty rain curtain. I held an umbrella, walked on the familiar bluestone road, and walked towards the empty little home. That was where I had lived for 14 years, my grandmother's old house. My mother often said that my grandmother was a stubborn old woman. Even though her daughter married into a wealthy family, she insisted on staying in the countryside and guarding the dilapidated house. However, it was this old, stubborn woman who gave me the happiest childhood. I always felt that although my grandmother was gone, at least Jessica was still there. Although she did not belong to me, I was still her first choice. The rain was not heavy, and vendors rode tricycles slowly through the streets, hawking fresh bayberries. Just as I passed a small Western-style building, a man came out with an umbrella. Seeing me, he asked in surprise, "William, why are you back? It's not the day for the sacrifice yet." I forced a smile and said, "I miss home, so I came back to stay for a few days." He looked at the suitcase I was carrying, and a trace of pity flashed in his eyes. "Why did you come back alone, kid? Your grandmother's old house has been uninhabited for a long time, and it has rained recently, so it must be very damp. Why don't you stay at our house first?" As he said that, he reached out and snatched my suitcase and pulled me towards the small Western-style building. I was arranged to stay in his daughter Olivia's room. Watching Uncle Brian busying around, I deeply understood what it meant to be hard to refuse a kind invitation. I wanted to refuse, but he asked with a slightly aggrieved expression, "Do you think our house is too shabby?" In the end, I compromised. Olivia's room is simple and clean. The most eye-catching thing is a row of huge bookcases, which are neatly arranged with various books, models, trophies, and certificates. These made me realize that Olivia has been a top student since she was a child. Although we are not familiar with each other, we are not strangers. After all, we are alumni of the same university. It's just that she was recommended, while I was barely admitted by relying on the local hookup. That night, Alex called me. I heard his muffled voice through the receiver. "Simon said you went back to the South?" I simply replied, "Yeah." After a long time, he muttered, "Why didn't you tell me? I just wanted to go and relax." I understood his feelings for Jessica. Although I could guess some of it since adolescence, I still decisively rejected him. "No, we are not suitable." I heard his dissatisfied curse from the receiver. Silly. He hung up the phone. It rained all night, but the next day it cleared up. I was planning to visit my grandmother's grave, and just as I was about to open the door, I ran into Olivia. She was standing at the door, with emotions surging in her eyes. At that moment, I seemed to see the ripples of reluctance in her eyes. "Long time no see," she said, her voice still as clear and pleasant as I remembered. I smiled at her. "Long time no see." The owner of the room had returned, so I naturally had no reason to continue living there. When I said goodbye to Uncle Brian, he frowned and thought for a moment, and said with concern, "You haven't been back for so long, and your grandmother's old house is run down, and there's a lack of food and drink. How about this? Olivia can move in to take care of you and accompany you." I was about to refuse when Olivia spoke first. "Okay, I'll go back with you to clean up. It's not appropriate for a man and a woman to be in the same room together," she said with a smile. I couldn't refuse her insistence, so I had to go back to my grandmother's old house with Olivia. Although it has been uninhabited for a long time, I would pay someone to repair and inspect it every year. Apart from a little more dust, the house was not too bad. After we cleaned up, I sat on the steps outside and began to daydream. The scene in front of me made me feel a little peaceful. The sky was clear and clean after the rain, and there were big white clouds floating in the blue sky. It was a rare sight on a smoggy day in Beijing. Olivia handed me a bottle of water. I looked up and smiled at her. "Why did you come back so suddenly?" She smiled and replied, "My dad tricked me back." I looked at her, and my heart was inexplicably fluctuating. She was pretty. The sunlight shone on her body, giving her a golden look. She was gentle and beautiful, with a strong bookish air, which was completely different from Jessica's bright and flamboyant appearance. I looked away, thought for a moment, and then said, "Heal." The pace of life in the countryside is very slow, and I gradually adapted to it. During the time I spent with Olivia, I gradually discovered that she was an extremely considerate person. In order to prevent me from getting bored, she brought some extracurricular books for me to pass the time. She even secretly brought the puppy that my grandmother raised, the puppy that I have always liked. I squatted on the ground and stroked the puppy, feeling mixed emotions. Olivia stood silently by the side. After a long while, she whispered, "William, have you been wronged?" This sentence suddenly reminded me of many past events that were lost in time. When I was a child, I was often teased by the children in the village who said I was a wild child without parents, or even worse, a bastard. At that time, I was weak in character and would only cry silently in a corner. Every time I cried, Olivia would always find me, touch my head gently, and ask me, "William, have you been wronged?" Gradually, fewer kids bullied me, until I saw Olivia corner a little boy who threw stones at me in an alley and gave him a good beating. Only then did I realize that the skinny little girl had become a brave warrior in order to protect me. Olivia and me. When I was a child, I always clung to her, but why did we gradually become distant? A few days later, Simon sent me a short video. In the video, Jessica was sitting on the ground, holding a bottle of wine, muttering, "William." Her voice became smaller and smaller, as if she was choking. Next to her, Ryan stood next to her, frowning, obviously unhappy. Two messages were attached to the video. Brother Yuan, when will you be back? Jessica is drunk and keeps asking to see you. Now she is drinking in Yanhai and we can't do anything about her. Yanhai is one of the top clubs in Beijing. Jessica often drinks and makes trouble. She is willing to go with me only when I pick her up. I once asked her, "Aren't you afraid of mistaking someone for me?" She shook her head and said coquettishly, "How could I possibly make a mistake? You are the one and only William." Those small moments made up my 12 years of persistence and love. Seeing hope gave me the strength to persist for so long. I replied with a message, "Don't tell me about her anymore." As soon as the message was sent, Simon called. I picked up the phone, and before he could say anything, Jessica's drunken voice came from the other end of the phone. "William, is that you? When are you coming to pick me up? I was not feeling well the past 2 days, and you didn't come to see me. I haven't seen you for a long time." Her voice was low, as if filled with tears. I hung up the phone without hesitation. That night, Ryan asked to add me as a friend, saying he had something to show me. Although I had no interest in what he said, he kept asking until I agreed after more than 20 times. I opened the message and looked at the photo he sent, which made me feel uneasy. In the photo, Jessica was lying on the big bed in the hotel with her eyes closed, her black hair loose, and Ryan was next to her. Ryan explained in the text, "I know you like her, but Jessica's feelings for you are just family affection and habit. She loves me." He also added, "Tonight, she got drunk because she was jealous of me talking to other girls, so she went to you." I looked at the long string of words he wrote, and my heart was filled with sneers. The 12-year relationship came to an end the moment she kicked me out of the group. It was not as sad as I thought. I calmly replied to him, "I wish you happiness." After a few days of rain, Olivia still likes to make a pot of tea and sit by the window to write and draw, while I sit on the sofa with a book in my arms and read quietly. The puppy that Olivia gave me curled up at my feet and accompanied me quietly. There is still the sound of drizzling rain outside the window, and inside the house, there's the sound of Olivia's pen rustling on paper. Occasionally, the sound of me turning pages of books is intertwined with it, as if I can hear the echo of the peaceful years. However, a quick knock on the door broke the silence. Outside the door, Olivia's neighbor looked anxious and shouted, "Olivia, your father just fainted. Go back and check." Olivia paused, her body swayed slightly, then stood up suddenly and ran out like crazy. I hurriedly followed her, and her eagerness made me nervous. Uncle Brian has always taken good care of me and my grandmother's family. Especially after my grandmother passed away, he almost became my only relative. Every once in a while, he would come to see me with the food he cooked and ask if I was adapting to this environment. When we arrived at the Bai family's house, Uncle Brian was lying on the bed. His face was sickly pale. Olivia walked to the bed, frowning, with an undisguised trembling in her voice. "Dad, how are you? Do you want to go to the hospital?" Uncle Brian glanced at me, sighed, then fumbled under the pillow to take out a piece of paper and handed it to me. "There is not much time left," Uncle Brian said in a hoarse voice. "The person I'm most worried about in my life is Olivia. William, Uncle knows that you are a good child, and Uncle wants to entrust him to you." The paper he handed me clearly said, "Terminal cancer." Olivia took the paper and frowned more and more after reading it. He was silent for a long time and finally said, "It may be a misdiagnosis. Go check it out again in a few days." But the silence and fatigue on her face revealed her uncontrollable anxiety. Olivia became more and more silent, as if the weight of the world was on her shoulders. I always remember that when I was a child, I was the one who hid and cried secretly, but now, it was me who was looking for her, hiding in the corner and sobbing silently. She looked at me, raised her head, her nose slightly red, and her eyes still flickered with tears that had not yet dissipated. Seeing her like that, my heart ached. "If you want to cry, just keep crying, don't hold it back." I sat down next to her gently, raised my hand and hesitated for a moment, and finally slowly put my hand on top of her head and gently rubbed her soft hair like she comforted me when I was a child. June is drawing to a close. The weather seems particularly hot, and my mood seems particularly irritable. Perhaps because of this irritability, I feel that this summer is hotter than in previous years. I went home this time because my dad said he was sick. When I got home, he sent me away with a joke. So I always thought he was lying to me. I didn't say anything, just listened quietly, but I felt that she needed a listener now, not me who was eager to communicate. William, I'm sorry to bother you these past few days, Olivia said in a low voice. Don't take my father's words too seriously. I am not your responsibility, and you have no obligation to take care of me. You should not sacrifice your marriage for the so-called friendship. Uncle Bryant's meaning was very clear. He hoped that I would marry Olivia. Looking at the sky in the distance, I was silent for a long time. During this period of time, I don't know how to describe my feelings for Olivia. It's very comfortable to be with her, even if we don't say anything or do anything. When I see her crying, I can't help but feel distressed and will think about how to make her happy. It seems that letting her become a burden to me is not a thing that makes me uncomfortable, and I even have a little yearning. After a long time, I finally heard myself say, Sister Olivia, let's get married. Before I was 14, my parents were just strangers who appeared during festivals. After I was 14, they only asked me if I had enough money. I always doubted whether they really loved me. Maybe they did, but the emotional gap of 14 years made them not know how to get close to me. Every time I saw my mother interacting intimately with my brother, who was 5 years younger than me, I always comforted myself like this. When my mother learned that I was getting married, she only asked the woman's conditions and then agreed. I decided to set the wedding for a month later. Although Olivia suggested that everything should be simple, I refused. Although I can't give her a luxurious wedding, as a bride, she deserves more love and dignity. Since I decided to marry her, I can't let her suffer any grievances because of me. After discussing the marriage, we went home together. A blue Pagani function stopped at the door of the small building. Simon got out of the car, looking tired and with dark circles under his eyes. It was obvious that he had driven all night to get here. He frowned and glanced at Olivia beside me and asked in a deep voice, Is she the one you want to marry? As a brother, I only told Simon the news of the marriage. I nodded, and Simon, his face suddenly darkened. William, let's talk. Olivia silently stepped aside to give us space. Simon stared at me, frowning, and said in a heavy tone, Have you thought about it? You have liked Jessica for so many years. I don't believe you can change your mind so quickly. He paused for a moment and continued, Jessica hurt you, but this can't be a reason for you to hurt another innocent girl. Ask yourself, do you like her? I was slightly startled, and my mind flashed through every little detail of my time with Olivia. Being with her was plain but stable. Olivia didn't talk much, but every morning when I woke up, the table would be filled with breakfast she made for me. She would wear her very inconsistent cartoon apron and smile, and ask me to wash my hands and eat. Little Pudding would wag his tail and circle around her, as if he had become a part of her life. I suddenly understood, turned around, patted Simon on the shoulder, and answered firmly, Don't worry, I will never hurt Olivia. Simon sighed and said nothing more. Leaving Simon, my life became even busier. The wedding date was imminent, and the preparations at hand were piling up. There were all kinds of trivial matters to deal with every day, and even unconsciously, my time was almost filled with these things. Despite this, Simon would still send me messages from time to time. His text messages were always so concise, but they revealed some unspeakable emotions. He sometimes mentioned Jessica, saying that her life was not going well recently. I heard that Ryan had plotted against Jessica after she got drunk. Ryan actually threatened her with some of her embarrassing photos and forced her to accept the marriage proposal. The incident caused a sensation and even made the news. The old man of the Liu family was furious and asked her to quit the company's management. Jessica was a spoiled little princess since she was a child. How could she endure these blows? She began to drink to relieve her sorrow. When she was drunk, she yelled and asked to find me. No one could persuade her. Of course, Simon didn't tell me this, but Alex told me through text messages. His words were full of hope and helplessness. Can't you forgive her this time? Don't you feel bad? In fact, I no longer have any attachment to Jessica. In the 12 years of relationship, she never really considered my feelings. On the one hand, she gave me hope, but on the other hand, she kept cheating on me. Shouldn't I feel bad for myself? During this period, Jessica added me on WeChat many times and called me from different numbers. I blocked them all. We no longer have any friendships since she cut off contact with me because of Ryan. The irreparable damage has completely broken our relationship. Now, I have Olivia. Jessica is no longer a part of my life. It was more than a month before I saw Jessica again. That day, Alex sent me a message saying that he was nearby and asked me to meet him at the busiest commercial street. Before leaving, I took a stack of wedding invitations and stuffed them into my bag, intending to ask him to help me distribute them. Olivia and I had almost finished preparing for our wedding. Uncle Brian was getting weaker and weaker, but he was still happily waiting for our wedding. Perhaps, for us, this wedding was really the only bright spot in this dark life. As I walked along the commercial street, the flower beds on both sides were filled with bright red roses. Balloons and ribbons fluttered in the wind, and the romantic atmosphere was almost breathtaking. Two little girls passed by and excitedly discussed, "Wow, which rich young man is going to propose? It's so romantic. I heard that the one who is going to confess his love is a beautiful lady. There's also a large sea of roses transported by air in front, and even a small plane can be seen. He is really rich. Let's go and take a look." The crowd was surging, and I frowned, vaguely guessing something. I heard a few days ago that the Liu family gave Ryan 5 million yuan as a breakup fee. Ryan saw that there was no hope of hooking up with a rich family, so he took the money and ran away. I carried my bag and followed the crowd forward, walking towards the sea of roses. I followed the crowd and walked towards the place surrounded by a sea of roses. As expected, the intersection next to the cafe where we were supposed to meet was already crowded with people. Someone exclaimed, "The girl in the middle holding the flowers is so pretty. The boy next to her is so handsome. I like the one on the far right. He looks bad and bad. He really touches me." Comments flooded in like a tide, and everyone speculated, what kind of fairy tale plot is this? The beautiful heroine and the handsome knights are together? How handsome does the hero have to be to make this girl confess in public? I smiled helplessly, but didn't stop. At this moment, Alex saw me outside the crowd and immediately ran over excitedly. "Make way! Make way! Our hero is here." The crowd automatically parted, and I saw Jessica standing not far away, holding a large bouquet of Juliet roses in her arms. She looked nervous and expectant, as if all eyes were focused on her. Alex let go of my hand, pushed me, and said with a smile, "William, look, she is here to see you." Jessica walked towards me. Her slightly nervous expression seemed to want to melt all her apologies into this bouquet of roses. The friends around her showed satisfied smiles. Only Simon stood aside, leaning against the corner, looking at me lazily. Seeing me, he raised his eyebrows, as if to say, "This scene is good." "William," Jessica called me in a low voice, with a blush on her delicate face, and walked slowly towards me. The rose in her hand trembled slightly. "I'm sorry, what I did before was really too much. After you left, I realized that you were more important to me than I thought. Can you give me another chance? Let me make up for my mistake." I lowered my head and pulled out an invitation from my bag and handed it to her. "I'm getting married next week. Remember to come." I only told my parents and Simon about my marriage. Apparently, they didn't spread the news. Jessica suddenly rushed over, snatched the invitation I had just sent out, tore it up angrily, and threw it on the ground. Her eyes were red, staring at me, her voice trembling a little. "William, the joke I just told is not funny." I stared at her without a trace of sympathy, even a little indifferent. Jessica's extreme attitude made me speechless. She cried and tore up all the invitations in my bag, then suddenly grabbed my arm. "William, are you so cruel?" I shook her hand off and smiled faintly. "There are so many things to do at the wedding, and Olivia is still waiting for me, so I'll leave for now." 2 days later, Jessica actually bought the house next door and drove a limited edition Koenigsegg, which was parked directly in front of the shabby building. She was totally out of place. Every day, she would wait for me at the door, saying some annoying words to me, begging me to give her another chance. Finally, I couldn't stand it anymore and said to her with a sullen face, "I'm getting married soon. Please stop bothering me." She bit her lips tightly, and tears welled up in her eyes. A few minutes later, she squatted down, holding her head, and began to sob. "William, I know I was wrong. Please give me another chance. I beg you." Standing there, watching this once high and mighty lady kneel down in front of me, crying like a child, at that moment, I felt no emotion, but rather annoyed by her behavior. I leaned forward slightly and said coldly, "Jessica, your presence will only make Olivia uncomfortable. There will be no contact between us anymore. I will return the flowers you gave me intact." The wedding was held as scheduled. Outside the door, the wedding cars lined up in a long line. The grand scene made everyone feel the specialness and solemnity of this wedding. While I stood in front of the wedding car and prepared to get in, I saw Jessica, who was wearing a white wedding dress and delicate makeup. She stood in the crowd with red and swollen eyes and a forced smile on her face. She walked up to me, grabbed my arm, and said in a hoarse voice, "William, are you taking revenge on me? You can punish me in any way you want, as long as you don't marry someone else." I looked at her calmly and said softly, "No, I married Olivia not to get revenge on you, but because I wanted to marry her." Jessica's tears fell uncontrollably, and her hand holding my sleeve tightened. "But you don't love her, do you?" I gently pushed her hand away and smiled faintly. "Jessica, we have been friends for so many years, you should know me. If I didn't love her, how could I marry her?" I ignored her and got in the car. The motorcade slowly drove away until I could no longer see her lonely figure, still wearing her wedding dress, standing there, as if she was the only witness to this farce. After marriage, life didn't change much. In order to take care of Uncle Brian, we moved back to the small house. Olivia slept on the bed, and I slept on the floor. After all, when I was not sure of my feelings for her, I had to give her enough respect. Simon would occasionally contact me to chat about family matters and ask about my recent situation. As for Jessica, he never mentioned her again. I saw in the news that Jessica S.'s father was kicked out of the board of directors. Ryan S.'s methods were extremely cruel. Although he didn't have much legal awareness, he successfully resold several Tinder documents in Jessica S.'s hands to Lou's rivals. The business world is like a battlefield. Lou's enterprise was caught off guard and suffered heavy losses. Lou's father was forced to sell his shares to fill the hole. Although Ryan was sent to prison in the end, he was no longer the company's largest shareholder. Other shareholders took the opportunity to unite and take away his power. Watching the news reports, I couldn't help but sigh. This is probably the daughter's debt is paid by the father. Uncle Brian didn't survive the winter. Olivia handled the funeral calmly. Although she didn't show much emotion, I could see that she was in endless pain. After all, she and her father had been dependent on each other since she was a child, and they had a deep relationship. Perhaps it was because she didn't have her mother's company that Olivia knew how to take care of me better. We had been married for more than half a year, and I hugged her for the first time. At that moment, she finally couldn't hold back her emotions anymore, and she seemed to be overwhelmed. She cried and said, "William, I don't have a father anymore." I gently patted her back and choked with sobs to comfort her. "I am still here. I will accompany you for the rest of your life." We stayed in this small town in the south of the Yangtze River for a while after we got married. Now, Uncle Brian has passed away, and it's time for us to return to Beijing. When I was packing my luggage, Pudding came over with a diary that looked a little old in her mouth and put it in front of me. There were spider webs on the corners of it, and it seemed that it was found from a corner. I opened it curiously, and it recorded a girl's secret love for many years. This was a gentle and quiet girl who silently waited behind me year after year, but never revealed her feelings. Olivia came over after packing her things. Seeing me squatting on the ground flipping through my diary, she lowered her head and said shyly, "Did you see everything?" I looked up with a smile, tenderness in my eyes. "I like you too, Olivia." At that moment, it seemed as if time had stopped and all the pain and regrets dissipated in this sentence. Our feelings did not have a grand confession, nor earth-shattering declaration of love, but it was real, gentle, and ordinary. No matter how bumpy the road ahead is, I know that I have found the person I can rely on. And we will walk through life hand in hand, illuminating each other and warming each other's every day.